One of the guys running on the flat track Friday night, as the boys join me back in the studio, Matt Hoyt. And Matt's on the phone, so we will go from there. Welcome in, Matt. Matt Hoyt running for Sprint Cars of New England this weekend, and I do believe you're on the phone. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing tonight?
Excellent. So, exciting weekend ahead here Friday night up at the flat track at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. First and foremost, tell us how you caught the racing bug.
Well, I caught the racing bug. I was probably 10 or 11 years old. I always went to the races with my dad and watched guys like Chris Donnelly and Dan Duville wheel sprint cars at the local tracks. And from that moment forward, I just fell in love with it. Once I was old enough, I begged my parents to get a mini sprint, and we ended up in the 500cc mini sprints. And then from there, we graduated into the big car, and we've been running that for about 7 years now.
Talk to us a little bit about Sprint Cars of New England and the series that you run.
The Sprint Cars of New England is a really, really good group. It's kind of a family-sanctioned group. Justin St. Louis is the president. He's a great president. He took it over this past year. Dan Duville, he is the race coordinator. So basically, he's the one that we listen to on the track. And I think those guys have just done a phenomenal job with Sprint Cars in New England.
So, of course, they've been running the flat track now back the last couple of years after a couple of years off from COVID. Last year, Chase Briscoe was up there, and, you know, all of you guys as well. Talk to us a little bit about the flat track at New Hampshire and what to expect this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, the flat track it's exactly what the name is. You know, it's a pretty flat track. It's pretty small and pretty technical. Typically, it can tend to slick off. I know Friday we're expecting a little bit of rain, kind of midday. So hoping that the track will kind of hold a little bit of bite, and you guys will be able to see, you know, what these sprint cars can really do.
Is the flat track race at New Hampshire considered one of the marquee events on the Sprint Car New England schedule, or is this just another weekend with the boys?
You know, I think it is. I think it's a big event for Sprint Cars in New England. Just being at New Hampshire Motor Speedway for anybody, I think, is a big deal. You know, so I think a lot of guys, you know, there's a lot bigger names coming to this race. It seems. You know, obviously we're racing against Chase Briscoe, and I know there's quite a few guys coming over from New York too. So there will be some stiff competition out there for sure.
So, just a point of interest, Matt. I'm also a graduate of Granite State Mini Sprints. I think it was class of '94 or something like that. But what's it like when you're racing at the dirt duels, and then obviously Chase Briscoe comes in, the ultra professional team? Do you guys look in and learn little tricks from watching these guys and how they operate?
I mean, I think so. I think some guys will. You know, I don't necessarily spend a ton of time looking at what other guys do. Typically, I'm more focused on what our team's doing and moving our car forward and stuff like that. So, I mean, I definitely think that there's little pairs and stuff like that you can pick up along the way, especially from, you know, watching some of these more experienced guys on the racetrack itself. That's what really, you know, curves a good driver. Is just that experience and seat time, being able to watch some of those guys. So yeah, I think there will definitely be some things to learn from the bigger names coming into the area.
To piggyback off that, on the opposite end of the spectrum, does a guy like Chase Briscoe, who doesn't race in your series very frequently, come to the regulars of the series and try to get a hint or two here and there?
Yeah, I mean, I think he would. You know, the stuff that we race on up here is typically, you know, a lot smaller than what those guys are used to, and the track surfaces are a lot different all across the country. So I think, you know, I think that they would almost be mistaken if they didn't seek some type of input, you know what I mean, on what the local track surfaces are like.
Talk to us a little bit about the season so far for you.
The season's been pretty good for us so far. Every race that we've came off the trailer, we've had a fast piece of equipment. The first race over at Devil's Bowl, we ended up third in the heat race, and then fifth in the feature race. And then over at Bear Ridge, our most recent race, we actually won the heat race, and then we had a little bit of unfortunate contact on the taking the green for the feature race, and And in doing so, we bent a few parts and this and that, and we ended up 6th place in that one. So it's not going too bad, but still looking to move forward. That's for sure.
So Matt, I noticed that the points in your series is like you're 6th in points right now, I believe, and you're only 10 points out of the lead. Does it stay that competitive all year long in that tight of a race?
Yeah, it's definitely really, really tight right now. I think you'll see it kind of spread out a little bit as we get further along through the season. But I don't know. I mean, it seems to change every year. The way that everything's structured nowadays, I think it's going to be a lot closer racing and a lot more of a competitive championship this year. Absolutely.
So some of the tracks you go to, obviously, the car's got to be different, I would assume. What is the type of setup or the type of, car, the approach you're bringing this weekend to the flat track?
I would say, this weekend we're kind of anticipating it to be a little bit slick. I know that New Hampshire Motor Speedway has been working alongside with the guys over at the Legion Speedway, and they've got Dirtworm Dan over there doing some track prep. So I'm not really sure what to expect. And like I said earlier, I know that we're supposed to get a little bit of rain, I think, in the morning. So I'm kind of hoping that it's going to be a little bit slick because that's what I'm kind of gearing for. But, it definitely could be quite the opposite. I'm not sure.
Now, if it were to stay dry, and how would that adversely affect the car? And how does the dirt change, or how does the track surface change when weather does come or when it stays dry like it's supposed to?
Yeah, so basically, when it's dry like that, it's really hard to put the power on the ground with these cars. Most of these cars are pushing like 700 horsepower, and they're only weighing like 1,500 pounds. So it's really difficult to get that power on, transferred into the dirt. So that's kind of the biggest thing when it's slick, is just trying to put the power to the ground and keep moving forward and just picking cars off one by one. But as far as, if it does rain and stuff like that, the track can basically do a 180-degree flip. It can go from being, basically like glass where you're just spinning the tires and can't get a hold of nothing. And then if it rains real heavy and it really soaks into the track, you could have a ton of grip and you could be flying around that place. So Matt,
you got an opportunity to talk to your fans right now and people interested in your sport. What is it about Sprint Car New England's that's like the fans can't miss? Like what's the best part of your show?
Oh, the best part of our show, man, I think is just the cars themselves. I mean, anybody that knows anything about sprint cars, they're just the craziest machines out there. I mean, like I said earlier, they weigh 700 pounds, they have 700 horsepower and they weigh 1,500 pounds, and most of the time we're trying to cook around a quarter-mile bull ring like at the flat track. Basically just they're so aggressive and so snappy, and the big wings on top really keep the cars planted in the corners and stuff like that and allow us to go a lot faster through the corners than let's say like the dirt midgets and stuff like that. So I would say the wow factor is definitely, the horsepower, the speed, and just the snappy, aggressive racing that Scone, produces.
So for the listeners out there, tell us a little bit about some of the people who sponsor the car, help you get from race to race, and the car number, all of that, so people can be on the lookout for you this weekend up at Loudon.
Yeah, absolutely. So my car is the black and orange 07. I've had that number forever. My parents really have a big part in the racing program. Ed Hoyt Quality Logs, that's my dad. He sponsors the car, obviously. And then we have David Bourne Construction out of Holderness, New Hampshire. He sponsors the car, helps us get to the track every week. And then HT Mechanical out of Canton, they sponsor the car too. And every little bit helps as far as sponsorships for a small team like us. But it's not only the sponsorships; it's all the support along the whole board. You know what I mean? I mean, we have a ton of family members and a ton of supporters that come out to the racetrack for me every time that I'm on the track, and that stuff really means the world.
Any social media channels for people to find you or the race team on?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. It's just Matt Hoyt on Facebook.
Excellent.